we're gonna go ahead and continue this. All right. So check it. But the net effect, as I saw it, was that passengers thought they were being duped by the surface makeover. The lesson I learned from Hall's mistake is that you can't change a corporate image overnight or at will. Years later, in the 1980s, well, that's still like 40 something years ago, I would say at at Continental that we couldn't reposition our airline's advertising or change our aircraft color scheme until we had a product change to back up our claims. Floyd Hall wanted the world to think everything was wonderful at Eastern before his product was ready. I'll never forget flying one of Eastern's particularly rugged looking DC-8s. Let's see here. DC-8. What that John look like? Aircraft. It's old fashioned. Don't look crazy though. Yeah, it look alright. You know what I'm saying? Eastern's particularly rugged looking DC-8s and nodding the new company logo on a decal on the seat back in front of me, and nodding the new company logo on that decal of it. Real quick. Decal. Design prepared with special paper. Transfer onto another service. Okay. On closer inspection, I could still see the old emblem, yeah, emblem peeking out from underneath. And I remember feeling sheepish. These words, yo. A person or expression showing embarrassment from shame or lack of self confidence. You say a lot of people, they feeling sheepish. And even a little ashamed that I worked for an airline that would make such a transparent attempt to fool the public. Some of Hall's finishing touches were simply not cost efficient, either in a misguided attempt to promote the airline's first class service, for example. He started using elegant, we're just gonna have to, what is
Rosenthal.
Rosenthal in German or Jewish surname, meaning Rose Valley. Okay, okay. There's no definition found for this. Elegant Rosenthal porcelain china, which was not the sort of china that made practical sense for commercial flights. Elegant Rosen. Hold on, let me see. Let's see something real quick. If we good. Okay. Like fine china? What do we for airplane? For airline? What? Which was not the sort of china that made practical sense for commercial flights. Okay, yeah, I see. Rosenthal was expensive and certainly classy, but had a tendency to chip and disappear. On average, regular glassware lasted around 20 airline flights before it had to be replaced. Our expensive Rosenthals were out of commission in less than 3 trips, if they even made it to their first wash cycle. The china was so beautiful that our biggest problem became theft. Jeez. The highlight of my brief tenure at Eastern, however, had nothing to do with my job. Since returning from 6 months at Fort Dix, I had resumed a friendship with Bob Carney, however you pronounce it, an HBS friend whom I had known casually at school and who was then working in investment banking. We met for lunch a couple of times when I was working at TWA and after I landed at Eastern, whose office was just across from his at One Rockefeller Plaza. Our lunches became more frequent and our friendship blossomed. He had gone to work at SG Warburg and Co. just before I joined Eastern. Previously, he had been at Dillon, Reed and Co. Well, what's up with all these co's? Where he started right out of business school. Bob and I were an odd match. He was quiet while I was relatively outgoing. He was conservative, I was more of a risk taker, but our differences were healthy. He had a strong finance background while I was stronger in marketing. And after my lunches at Charlie O's, Ollie sounds like old Charlie's, a midtown burger joint, we found some real common ground. We were both around the same age, both bachelors, and both stifled by our corporate constraints. Our discussions kept coming back to the changing face of airlines. It wasn't hard to see, even from my lowly vantage point at Eastern, that the industry was undergoing a transformation. The seeds of what would later be airline deregulation were clearly blossoming. Supplement, Supplemental airlines, the charter carriers of the time were begin being given being were being given increased authority, and Bob and I both recognized an early opportunity there. The charter business was and remains attractive because within it you can control costs and load factors, the percentage of seats occupied, thus keeping ticket prices down. You might set up a charter once a week from New York to Cancun, let's say, and sell all the seats on the departing flight to one tour operator and all the seats on a return flight to another. Hold up, man. Tour operator? Just for, just for clarification, man. I'm just operating a tour, I'm assuming. Tour operator. Let's just, for time's sake, tour operator on a return flight. Then you'd have a New York Cancun track, which could be profitable even with only one round trip each week. Today, the charter business is wide open, but in the 1960s, the civil aeronautics, oh, man, say this right? Aeronautics. Yeah, I said it right. Aeronautics, the science or practice of traveling through the air. Board, the Civil Aeronautics Board (CAB) kept an iron fist around its precise, precious supplement charter certificates. Gradually, we formulated a plan to sell ourselves as airline industry advisors, which was a brassy thing to do considering that between us, Bob and I, Each had less than 3 years of experience. Still, we put together a business plan, including the idea of building a new supplemental airline, which we circulated to potential investors. We didn't quit our day jobs right away. After all, the only thing we had was a fairly thin idea. But we began devoting most of our spare time to the venture. We had some trouble getting financing, which we anticipated. Bob arranged for a pitch to his boss. I should pronounce his name, man. Sigmund. Sigmund Freud, not Sigmund Warburg. Before which I had to submit to a bizarre handwriting analysis conducted by a Swiss woman. The financier kept on his the finance. All right, hold up, man. Hold up, man. Financier. Yeah, financier. Swiss woman, the financier, kept on his payroll, and after which I reminded myself that even the most successful businessmen were sometimes held together with loose screws. There were similar, although less amusing, frustrations at every turn, and it began to look as if we might never get off the ground. Finally, after the traditional sources of capital kept turning up dry, Bob and I thought about gearing up without any outside funds. Neither of us had families or extravagant lifestyles to support. If we had to, we could work out of our apartments for a while on the cheap. Gotta do what you gotta do, bro. Fortunately, Bob's zeal matched my own, and we resolved to leave our jobs at the first opportunity. I was not at all disappointed to be leaving Eastern. I was tired of having to do things a certain fixed way just because that was the way things were always done. I had no stomach for having to back up my bosses when I knew that what they were doing wasn't necessarily good for the company. I didn't enjoy the way my superiors sometimes took credit for ideas or grunt work that originated with me or my colleagues, or the way some bosses were quick to dismiss a fresh approach simply because it came from someone too low in the company hierarchy to be taken seriously. The entrepreneur in me was aching for change. In resigning from Eastern, I went to see Todd Cole, Eastern's senior vice president of finance, a man I respected and with whom I had worked closely on a number of projects. I told him my plans, and he responded with the standard speech about my leaving a promising career. He let he let on that he could see me as Eastern's treasurer in short order. I was flattered at the suggestion, but reasoned that short order probably translated to 5 years, which to me seemed an eternity. I'd be 31, middle aged as I saw it then. It was the first week of August 1966, or back in the day. And as I walked out of Tin Rock for what I rocked out of Tin Rock for what I thought would be the final time, I stopped, apparently, appropriately, by the revolving doors to chat with Bob Arnold, one of the company's senior treasurer executives. He wanted to offer his good wishes. I wanted to talk about our new venture and the challenges ahead. I was bubbling with excitement and would uh shoot, we will get back to this, y'all.